and welcome to BrainX here at Ramada Kelowna. Coming up, we're going to hear from some of the most inspired thinkers in the field as they share some powerful insights into brain injury.
So I want to say thank you, obviously, to Brain Trust, Magna Bona, everyone in the organization for having us and the invitation. It's a real privilege to be able to speak to you today a little bit about Journey Home. So I'm going to run the IT side. Helen and Cheryl, thank you for your kind words. It's a bit of a foreshadowing, though, two of our talks. I'm 6'2", and microphone issues usually, Kyleen's obviously not the same height. So this is pretty perfect. So wanted to give you a little bit of a sense of the Journey Home strategy and process, and how it all came about, and link it in to this conversation with respect to brain injury. So there have been strategies done in the past. We've had the privilege of being on Phil's show a little while ago, and he'd asked the question, there's a strategy that was done 10 years ago. What happened? Why didn't it get implemented? What's going to be different this time? And they're all very legitimate questions. The big difference, I think, this time is there's a real commitment and will in the community. There's a lot of energy to see this forward, to see this through, to see it funded, to see action. So funding's a big part of this, but action is a bigger part of this. It's something that we've really noticed and learned through the process. And so the strategy's coming forward. We promised council last year. We've been on the job for 11 months. We promised we'd deliver it June 25th, and happy to report that it will be delivered June 25th. So that's actually really exciting for us. One person we'd like to point out, I don't know if she's here today, because I think she's actually one of those people working overnight and weekends, as Phil said, is Sue Wheeler, who works with the City of Kelowna as the Social Development Manager. Sue has been working tirelessly. She's reasonably new to our community in the last couple of years, but she's been a real catalyst for change and a change maker behind the scenes. And so she's somebody that if you see her or get to meet her, we'd love it if you pass along some thanks, because she works behind the scenes, but she's been making amazing things happen. And so from that too, we'd also like to have Councillor DeHart will be here, but Mayor Bazran and City Council had asked us to chair this public task force. There are 23 task force members. Cheryl's here. Are there other task force members here? Can't see any others. There's a couple, handful, but I just want to say thank you to all of them too. Big multi-sectoral representation on that front from all walks of life and people with lived experience, people from different sectors, social service agencies, faith community, Indigenous community, for-profit companies, and otherwise have been working together on the strategy over the last year. Dr. Miller's comment about personalized care, personalized attention, or individual learning about people really rung true with us. One of the things that Kyleen and I, when we got asked to do this, it was a bit of a surprise, because we're not experts in this. What we realized, though, in talking to council was they were hopeful that we could convene, and that is something that we both do a lot of facilitation and convening, and hopefully bringing some energy and enthusiasm to what we do. But one of the things we've learned a lot is we have a lot of one-size-fits-all approaches to homelessness in society, and there are things that we have to start breaking down to things that are more individualized and a bit more customized. And had a real good story sort of as a segue to Kyleen speaking here too, just on some data. But we were in some of the shelters yesterday meeting with staff and meeting with some of their different clients, and they were telling us a story about one of their clients who actually had been asked to leave the facility. And they'd really struggled with him on a bunch of fronts, and there was different extrapolations of not following the rules or not listening or drug use or other things like that, and in and out of the facility, in and out of healthcare, in and out of contact with bylaw, with the police, with otherwise, until finally he actually got a medical assessment done, and they found out that he had early onset dementia that came from a traumatic series of brain injuries. And so it was something that, we've applied really blunt force instruments like bylaw and policing to that, and they're not things that will necessarily help that individual progress. So customized sort of duty of care to the individuals is a big part of what we've learned, and it's a big part of what Journey Home is built around. So Kyleen's gonna give us a little bit of the data on that front.
So why were we here talking about brain injury in relation to homelessness? Well, the data is really clear, and Carrie did a good job of talking about the co-occurring of issues. So what we see is there's a high prevalence of people who are homeless that have had brain injury. And we've also seen people with brain injury that have led to them becoming homeless. And I saw that directly when going to some of the lived experience circles. So you can see some really high, shocking statistics, up to around 45%. And in that study, 73% had experienced their first one at the age of 18. years old. And some of the same common issues you hear: assault, sports, falls, motor vehicle accidents. The other statistic, the reason we included that, is that some groups are experiencing things in a different way. So here you see Aboriginal people had experienced it at twice the rate. So our strategy has really put a population lens focused on the strategy to recognize that people don't experience these things in the same way, and we need to think about how it's experienced in different ways for different groups. So when we're thinking about the care we give for people, personally and professionally with brain injury, we need to think about the risk factors and how different interventions may be necessary in the treatment.
So we're learners. Again, we're not experts. The people we've been working with in the community task force of 23, we've had some community summits that have had almost 200 participants, service sector participants. We're listeners, and we've been coming up a very steep learning curve. Some of the things that we've come to learn, again, not as experts, is just there's some things that are really holding us back as a community in terms of making progress in homelessness, and they're not maybe things that you think. I think people leap to money right away or political will. A lot of them aren't those things. Some of them are things like media, and no offense, Phil, or others have enough jokes about lawyers and others today, but the reality is we talk about these things in quick sound bites: mental health, addictions, brain injury, and we talk about them as though that they're all directly correlated. I think we all know people who might have mental health issues who certainly don't have addiction issues, for instance, or who have brain injury issues who don't have any of the other issues, but we treat them all the same. And so it's one of the challenges we've seen with sort of like bringing business ethic, and I lead a business, to some of these services, is that we get kind of the Walmartization of service. We're actually dealing with everybody in the same way when the issues are quite distinct, and we need to actually start having our services built around those who need the services rather than built around the agencies or governments that are actually delivering them. And so that's one of the things that we've really been working on, is actually building that system of care that's client-centered. And so that's something that'll come out of the strategy and the way forward on that front. There's a lot of stigma and bias and stereotype that we need to overcome as a community. I think all communities are subject to this. This is decades of conversations about pulling up your bootstraps and taking care of yourself and being on your own. You go back to the Ronald Reagan's and Margaret Thatcher's, and even before that, you hear a lot of those discussions. Well, that's 40 years ago in a lot of cases. And so we've got to move on, and just talking about it being today. Carrie was talking about things in the present is something that we really got to start thinking about today and how we want it to be, not how it's been, because what's got us here is going to be successful moving forward. The other one is just silver bullet thinking. If we do this thing, if we hire more bylaw enforcement, this will fix the problem. As you all know, it doesn't fix the problem, and actually in some cases it's making the problem worse. And so one of the things we really wanted to do was get out and connect with the community, connect with the service providers, and we've done that through our design labs and otherwise. Slipping through here. Conducted almost 30 design labs to look at some of these problems in depth, and some community summits with the service providers to really understand. The answers are generally out there, but they're not silver bullets. They're actually fairly interesting systems that require a lot of action, but a lot of them are small. Like a lot of them are things that we need to change our behaviors, we need to change how we work together, change how we collaborate, and then we're actually working to build these little systems. But the answers were generally there. So a lot of it was just listening and participating. I think Kyleen's going to talk to us a little bit about the lived experience circle and those points of contact.
So as Martin said, we did do extensive consultation, both what the City of Kelowna has seen at this level before, quite rare, and really across the whole country in terms of people doing homeless plans, serving plans. So just, I'd like to see a show of hands. If you were at a community or youth summit, one of our 23 design labs, filled out the public survey, we're on the lived experience circle or Away Home Kelowna, all of them who have provided an input to the plan. Excellent. And particularly what we want to mention on the next slide is the prevalence of our lived experience circle, and I'll bring in this artwork to show you, is that this has been really unprecedented and will be a crucial strategy moving forward, which would be we can't deliver a plan for people experiencing homelessness if we don't know how, why, what their experiences are, what the gaps are, what they need to move forward. And so we've had a lived experience circle that's been convened by, a fantastic person, G. We've had over 80 people attending those lived experience circles, and we've had a graphic illustrator who has and we're going to put this into a book for people to see, has really explained what their solutions and strategies and issues. And at the very beginning, this was around, what was some of the visioning and what did people want to experience. And two of the people from the circle who had brain injury came back and took that graphic illustration, worked with the art group at Brain Trust, and put together this picture here. So we really wanted to bring it to show it, how it reflected their experience. So they will be a key part going forward as both through the transition period and as we roll out the strategy to make sure that we are including their voices, listening to their needs, and putting them at the forefront of our strategy.
The strategy itself focuses directly on homelessness, so people that have actually chronic or episodic homeless situations that are going on, and we're actually just the point in time count work is just been completed, and I believe it'll be published in the next couple of weeks just to give you some new and updated data. So we're working from some 2016 data and had some insight into where things stand today, but we're really focusing on the black parts of the triangle, so people that are experiencing homelessness. One of the things that we've learned is if we don't have a strategy built around providing funding to move the needle for them, nothing happens for them, and we don't actually move forward. So we have almost 5,000 people in the community that have core sort of housing needs, so high risk for homelessness. That means they pay more than 50% of their incomes for housing. And so the strategy really focuses on providing housing, building units, providing supports for the people that actually have chronic and episodic homeless today. And then we're going to have the strategy starts to shift over time as those units are built to prevention, to actually providing support so people don't end up homeless. It's less expensive to provide support so people don't end up homeless than it is to build new housing for those who are homeless. So as Kyleen mentioned, the consultation has been very deep. We've connected with as many sectors as we possibly can, because that's been some comments from the past, is that some sectors have been predominant and it omits or might miss the perspectives of others. We've learned tons from the lived experience circle. It's one of those things that's, as they've said to us, please don't consult us in a checkbox engagement way. We have some of the answers, and they've had some brilliant counterintuitive answers that they're leading out. They'll form part of the backbone organization we'll talk about going forward to help us solve some of these things, and actually very elegant solutions, very simple ones, very cost-effective ones in a lot of cases. But we've been working in an environment where we assume what people want, and it's been fascinating when you ask the second or third questions what they actually want. And so it's been really rewarding and really eye-opening on that front. A lot of unusual suspects too, technology sector, innovation sector, social enterprise sector, others that haven't really participated in the past. Very keen to get involved. So we've got the Innovation Center downtown. Those people really wanted to get involved and help. They're chomping at the bit. How can we participate in this? So really looking for different perspectives. We wanted to drive deeper too. It's not just identifying the issues, but just what are some of those solutions and actually how are we going to implement those. And really wanting to reflect too as a community going forward, what are the barriers that we're causing through our own thought processes or stereotypes or biases that are actually holding us back from action.
So really in a nutshell, on the next slide, come out and join us on June 25th. It'll be publicly available. You can live stream it. You can join us in council chambers. But that is our strategy in a nutshell. I just want to tell you that the core foundational principles that have come out of this community are the lived experience. We need to be very cognizant and make sure that reconciliation is embedded throughout, and that innovation is something that's come out of the Okanagan community, never seen in a homeless serving sector plan before, and really gaining national attention. So that's really exciting. And then 3 key things that we need to do. We need to have a population lens to look at the different groups that may experience it. We know Indigenous homeless are much overrepresented. And so we have different groups that we need to have a population lens for, and we need to think upstream. Once we deal with, we know we have an acute crisis, we're very aware of that, but once we are dealing with the acute crisis, we move upstream to prevention. We are always going to have some form of homelessness, right? We want to get it to a functional level. And then we want to work on prevention purposes. We need housing. It's based on a housing first philosophy. People deserve homes. We cannot deal with their other issues until they have a place to rest their head. If they spend all day long protecting their belongings and not knowing where they're going to sleep, they are not going to think about all the trauma, addictions, and anxiety and everything else. But to put them in housing, put anybody in housing without supports, is absolutely going to fail. So those wraparound supports are critical. And then finally, we will have a neutral organization moving forward that will coordinate the services. So we're really pleased about that. And then just in a couple of slides, we'll just tell you this is what it's going to cost. So you see the magic figure out on the next slide. So 47 million is what we took to council 3 weeks ago. It's broken down. I'm happy to tell you about where that comes from. The backbone organization is key. It is going to catalyze. We already have a home for it, and we already have people investing in this before we even started because they so believe in the process. And it will help to leverage the housing supports and all the preventative measures in the school district and with agencies we need to make sure that we never have this kind of acute crisis that we're seeing in our community going forward.
Just as Phil mentioned, just on the strategy side, I mean, this actually includes or incorporates building 300 units that are new purpose-built units for those who are homeless. There are commitments now, I believe, for 110 of them over this process. There have been 110 committed this year by BC Housing. The city's worked in partnership on the land side as well. There are another almost 100 that are in conversation right now that are actually going to go through process. So we've made a lot of progress this year. 1/3 of the units are already committed and are going to be built this year. The other 2/3 will be following, and we're working through that process that hopefully they'll be built in the next 2 years. So that's actually quite a big victory for the community and something that we're quite excited to be participating in. 300 units constructed, 500 prevention or supports basically. So we're actually providing wraparound support for 500 additional as well on top of that. And then with this backbone organization that will actually help coordinate, catalyze, convene the sector to really start working together. The sector has actually been fantastic to work with, and they've been really collaborative with each other. We've heard lots of stories historically about maybe it wasn't as collaborative, but we haven't observed that. We've observed a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of wanting to move this forward, which has been great. Oh. Interest of time. Okay. This is one of the things too, you know, obviously you're going to get asked this by senior government agencies or by council, like, why bother? Why are we doing this? Certainly compassion, I think, in actually treating people with dignity and providing housing and respecting that as a right of people would be one of them. But when you get into government, it does come down to money in some cases, and we've got to make that argument. But basically, there's a series of empirical studies that have been done over the last 15 years that show for every dollar that we invest in this process with the governments and government agencies, all the parties that participate save $2. So the ROI on that is higher than pretty much everything government invests in. So something that we're really trying to make that point and share that out with people is that the investment case, the business case, for those who like to think in those terms, is very strong. In Kelowna's case, Dr. Alina Turner, who's been working with us, is a national expert on this. They'd actually costed out what's the system-based cost going forward through the strategy if we do nothing. It's about $100 million. And the system-based cost going forward, if we make these investments, and again, these investments, as you build things and you turn to prevention, the costs actually go down in terms of providing the services. And it ends up providing $50 million in savings. And so it's one of those things that the business case is very compelling, and we're starting to see reaction from senior governments, but the participation in the community has been overwhelming. Alina said there's been unprecedented participation. Mayor Basran had mentioned that they felt this was the most contact there's ever been with the community ever. In a city-led or city-based process. And so it's something that we just see the momentum, you feel the energy, but you just also feel like we've reached this tipping point where people have said enough, but not enough in an angry way, enough in a way that we want to make a difference and want to make change. And there are a lot of people putting up their hands saying, please ask us, what can we do to actually help here, and what can we do to move the needle? And so as you said earlier, you know, this quote was great because we got asked too, just, you know, why have you focused the strategy down on this one segment of the population rather than having it deal with everything: affordable housing, attainable housing. People who work, say, in the service sector are struggling to afford housing. Why haven't you touched everyone? There are other strategies going on in the community and at the provincial level that are dealing with those. But really, this quote says it all. Unless housing funding is specifically targeted to homelessness, homeless people, especially those with complex needs, don't get housing. Full stop. So that's really why we focused the strategy down, to be very crisp on that front, and built the funding, built the other strategy delivery, built the backbone organization concept around that notion.
So just to wrap up, we just want to tell you that although we were delivering the strategy on June 25th, this is just really the beginning. This is when the hard work. The journey is going to be really a lifelong journey. We're developing a transition team to set up all the infrastructure, the governance, the team, look for the funding and advocacy. And that lived experience group is starting an education campaign to really help destigmatize and make awareness around the different needs that lead to homelessness and the different experiences of people. So as Martin said, why is Journey Home so important? Because we need to treat people with dignity, because everybody deserves a home, and because everybody experiencing it has experienced it individually, and we need to unpack and understand the reasons that have led to that, and then try to find ways to, support them as they move forward. Thanks very much.
That's all from us here at the Brain X Symposium. If you'd like more information on any of today's topics, you can head over to Brain Trust Canada's website. I'm your host, Lucy Hazelwood. Until next time, this is Shore TV.